Smells like blueberry pie. We're talking Hugh Grant. We're talking Heretic. Let's do it.
Are you interested in learning more about the Church of Jesus Christ?
Come on in.
We can't come inside unless another woman is present.
My wife is home. Does that count?
Great.
You like pie?
So two religious women are drawn into a game of cat and mouse in the house of a strange man. This movie's rated R for lots of bloody violence. It comes to us from Scott Beck and Bryan Woods. The guys behind A Quiet Place, which is a movie I love, but they also wrote and directed 65. You remember the Adam Driver dinosaur movie? That was weird. By the way, I know the mic's a little awkward. I've got a new rig coming, but it's not here yet, so I'm holding it. Hugh Grant, Mr. Reed. These two Mormon girls, we have an interesting conversation with them in the beginning, but they're essentially showing up to people's houses, trying to convert them, probably getting shut down more consistently than not, and they knock on Hugh Grant's door. Mr. Reed, he opens the door. You've got a pleasant smell of blueberry pie, a charming and warming man, a guy who wants to talk about religion and has some questions along the way, but why wouldn't they be all in on this guy who does seem like he's going to be accepting of what they have to say in the beginning? Chloe East and Sophie Thatcher are our main characters here, and I'd say Thatcher's character is a little more willing to go toe-to-toe with Hugh Grant here. They have some great back and forth to where he's trying to lay down what he believes to be the law, and she's pushing back, which you don't expect a young and polite Mormon girl to do. And then you have Chloe East's character, and she's very polite throughout the entire film. Yes, sir. No, sir. Even when things start to get a little weird, she's standing there being as nice as possible, which makes for a nice triangular dynamic between the three characters. And this is a very simplistic setting. A simplistic story, but they stay in pretty much one large location, move around the house a little bit, but it's all up to the performances here. It's also up to the script to keep us interested. And I'll say this to start out. I think the first half of Heretic is better than the second half. Because in the second half, when a door opens up, things start to change just a little bit. And it becomes something that I felt was just a bit more generic than what the first half was. Now, can I sit back and say, well, I've seen that done before in exactly that way? No, it was interesting to a degree. But what I found so fascinating about this movie was this character questioning everything these girls had to say, but he was always one step ahead with the point that he was trying to make. And this gets revealed to us as the movie goes. He knows where he's going with all of this. These girls, just innocent bystanders, they have no idea what he's trying to say. And it's a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of back and forth. But I love that this movie just deep dives into theology. It deep dives into religion and questioning certain aspects that may be a little shaky. And then the similarities between different types of religion, where they all spawn from and how each of them are different in a unique, special in some way, but a very unique way. And that presents a lot of questions for the audience. It's like, what are these girls going to think about what he's trying to say? But also, are they feeling as uncomfortable as I am? Because I don't care how good it smells. This guy's weird.
He stinks, and I don't like him.
And yes, it's a minimalist movie, but it's the idea of faith versus the reasoning behind faith. And it's all pointing to something specific. We're trying to figure out what he's trying to say, but also why he's arguing this in the first place. But then how we can poke holes in an argument from him that just seems so sure of itself, yet you can begin to take pieces of that down. And that's what one or two of these girls decide to do at a point, especially Thatcher's character, again, willing to go toe-to-toe with what he's trying to say, but also what's the point he's trying to make. And I don't know if the movie ever fully gives us his point. You definitely understand what he's trying to say, but I wish I would have had a more resolute reason to everything behind his actions in this film. And that's what I thought this third act was going to do. But by the time you get to the third act, you start seeing some things and the movie's doing some things. And, you know, it almost felt like it's a very different story and it goes in a very different direction. But how I felt about the ending to Don't Breathe Don't Breathe is a great horror movie with some awesome moments, a very different style of horror movie, much less of a horror thriller, some more action in there for sure. But Don't Breathe had an ending that I'm like, I don't know if I can fully be on board with this, but it's at least interesting. I eventually came around on the ending, but with this movie, I'm like, am I going to come around on the ending, or does it just try to do one too many things that takes away from the beautiful simplicity of that first act and just the fascinating dialogue between those? And I'm a guy who comes from a very religious background, and to me, seeing all of the things that are pointed out and how each argument has its own way about it, I find these things very fascinating. I find the idea of debating and deep diving and really just getting into the meat and bones of religion awesome. And there are thoughts that I had while we were going. There are thoughts that our characters had. But ultimately, there are a lot of great questions posed. Not a ton of answers, but I was very intrigued by what they were trying to do and say, even though some of it I'm just sitting back going, yeah, it's mumbo jumbo, but it's presented in an interesting way. And whereas the first half is just really smart, the second half it becomes way less simple, a little more convoluted, and I believe it tries to do too much without saying what the film had to start. But while some will, take the second half of this movie and just jump off, I was still really interested and intrigued. I liked these characters. I liked being with these characters, hearing the conversation, whatever evil motivations are present. This is a horror thriller. You're going to have some moments. And I will admit, even a jump scare that I'm like, all right, that was pretty good. Pretty well timed, and some things about it that surprised me, even though, again, I didn't love where the story went in the third act, but it is definitely one that I'm going to recommend, hopefully go back to, and see how I'm feeling this second time, now that I know what to expect. So, Heretic, very different type of horror movie that in the first half relies on that dialogue, the conversation, how intrigued you are by that, and then gets the thrills and chills along with a story that becomes a little too convoluted. Never confusing, just a little too convoluted. Lots of bells and whistles, if you will, when in reality, I don't know if this film needed that. And I've got to give a shout out to the way this film was crafted. Obviously, our directors, writers did a nice job, but it's the performances, man. Our main trio, specifically Hugh Grant, and I know this sounds silly. If you haven't seen the movie, you're going to think I'm silly. I think they should campaign for Hugh Grant for an Oscar, A24. I genuinely believe that. He's that good in this movie. He is sinister, menacing, kind, warm, and he does all of it. And I'm like, this Hugh Grant-assance we're in right now, playing different types of characters, I'm in. This may be one of my favorite performances he has ever given, doing everything he's got to do for you to take this movie seriously. Before I give you my score, let me know your thoughts on Heretic. Also, I got a screener for Night Bitch. Should I review Night Bitch on this channel? Do you want to see that? If so, drop that like down below and let me know what is the best Hugh Grant performance of all time. And I have a question. Is he going to get the right amount of love? He is fantastic, along with Thatcher and East. It begins as a simplistic yet effectively written thriller as the screenplay peels back the curtain on religious perspectives and how far your ideology can take you. While the movie eventually trades in simplicity for convoluted ideas and rides a generic line in the third act, it still leaves a lasting impact. If you like psychological thrillers, horror movies that do a little something different, at least in the beginning, then I think you're going to like this. You're going to gravitate towards these characters, especially those two Mormon characters in the lead. But Hugh Grant, man, as this freaky dude, just a freaky guy. Not a guy I'd want as my neighbor, that's for sure. Maybe I would, because I do like blueberry pie. All right, thank you so much for watching.